It shouldn't be a coincidence that there were snow flurries at the VMAC on Thursday as the Seahawks introduced their new offensive coordinator. We'll be diving into everything we learned from Brian Fleury and Mike Macdonald today here on our Thursday edition, Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you are tuning in from Lakewood, Washington, or you're across the country tuning in from Providence, Rhode Island. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen all 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. There were snow flurries in Renton, and it wasn't just the new offensive coordinator coming to town. That was part of it, but get an introduction to Mike Macdonald's new offensive play caller, Brian Fleury, meeting with the media for the first time today. We'll be diving into everything we learned from that gathering at the VMAC. Rashid Shaheed, is he going to be back or not? Our latest free agent primer, diving into the receiver position. And then we're going to look at the entire coaching staff as a whole. What do we know and what do we still not know about Mike Macdonald's staff for the upcoming 2026 season? Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Brian Fleury came in with a flurry literally today for the Seattle Seahawks, his introductory press conference. I was driving into the VMAC, and that might have been the hardest snow I have seen in this area in quite some time. Big flakes coming down. It's fitting that it was snow flurries with Fleury coming in for his introductory press conference. And Rob, we got an idea very quickly why Mike Macdonald made this selection. We know that Macdonald's a straight shooter, and he got right to the point before we even had an opportunity to ask Fleury any questions on how this process went and why the Seahawks ultimately went outside of the building to replace Klint Kubiak. Take a listen.
We had some really great, talented coaches in-house that we talked to, and all those guys did a phenomenal job. Brian's someone that I've known about for a while, and we have some common relationships that we shared, kind of throughout the coaching ranks. So I knew about Brian. I knew he was a great coach. And then we had an opportunity to talk to him, and he just did a phenomenal job. I think his vision for what he believes in offensively and with a football team was aligned with how we wanted to, and just hit the principles and philosophy on how he goes about his business and how he coaches and what he wants from our offense. He took it straight out of our culture graphic. So a lot of alignment, and it gave us an opportunity to have some great continuity and keep some great coaches as well, and let us take our offense to the next level. So we're really excited about it. We're off and running right now, trying to finalize our staff, and excited to start our process.
So an interesting first minute or so there from Mike Macdonald. You didn't hear any reference to previous play calling experience. And later in the press conference, this was my number one takeaway from this entire gathering today, Rob. Later in the press conference, Macdonald was asked straight up about not having a play calling experience, Brian Fleury, and he immediately said, I think it's overrated. And he kept pointing to the continuity aspect and all of the different coaching experiences that Brian Fleury has had leading up to this. We've talked about the defensive coaching background in the NFL, as well as the offensive coaching jobs he's had in Kyle Shanahan's system in San Francisco. And you put those things together, and the shared vision, the alignment, that was huge with Klint Kubiak last year. Very clear that the play calling experience, yes, it was considered, but there were a lot of other big fish in terms of what they were looking for, the checklist that Brian Fleury passed with flying colors.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, this is my, first impression with Brian Fleury, and I could not have been more impressed with just the clarity of his vision, and just his confidence, and how I believe that this is actually going to make Seattle an even more potent and explosive offense moving forward. I think that the fact that you centered on the lack of play calling and Mike Macdonald kind of scoffing at that notion, calling it an overrated element of this process. And, of course, I go back to the fact that Mike Macdonald, of course, had zero head coaching experience and yet just won the Super Bowl. I think that it's easy to understand why someone like Macdonald would think that the offensive play calling experience might not be quite as critical as maybe some other coaches out there. One of my big takeaways was the fact that himself was basically asked, what does a Brian Fleury offense look like? And essentially, his first sentence was, it looks very similar to the one that just won the Super Bowl. And to me, that kind of checks the box as far as what we've been talking about. More importantly, what Mike Macdonald's been talking about as far as the continuity. We all knew that this was going to be a similar style of the Klint Kubiak or Kyle Shanahan offense that we had seen a year ago. It's going to be the wide zone running game. It's going to be heavy utilization of the running backs and the tight ends. But it's also going to be completely dependent upon who the Seahawks have on their roster. And that, to me, was one of the more exciting elements in listening to Brian and watching Brian Fleury's introductory press conference, is the fact that he didn't pigeonhole himself. He basically acknowledged that his experience previously on the defensive side of the ball and in coaching tight ends and being a former quarterback himself. But again, all of his experience on defense, what that has allowed him to do is basically look at game planning from a different lens than most singularly offensive play callers. He can recognize where a linebacker might be supposed to line up, or where a safety or a defensive lineman, where they might be tilting and prevent or in offering some opportunity for an offense truly to attack. I think that is going to be a critical weapon for the Seahawks in terms of game planning before the week and before the game, and then also making adjustments during the game itself.
And I love that you mentioned the game planning aspect leading up to the game, because that was a big point of emphasis for Brian Fleury here, that he was excited about offensive play calling, because it really is, Mike Macdonald is kind of pushed against this with the way that he calls plays defensively, but defensive coordinating is a reactionary practice. It really is. You're reacting to what the other team is doing. I would say offensive play calling is the opposite. You are the tone setter. You are the ones that are trying to dictate things. And he was talking about how eager he was for the chance to be able to really dive in and put together his game plan and get his script and have his situational plays for the week assembled before getting to Sunday, where I think a lot of times defensive play callers, you have a game plan, but you have to be ready to react to whatever the offense throws at you. Again, it's more of a reactionary practice. And it sounded like he was really excited about that, because he has been a defensive coordinator, albeit at the college level. He has experienced that reactionary practice. He loves the idea that now he's going to get to be the attack dog and he's going to get to call plays. I thought that was really fascinating to hear his perspective there, which, again, you don't have that perspective if you have not coached offense and defensive positions and been a quality control coach on both sides of the ball at the NFL level. And you add his research seasons that he had in Miami, he has worn so many different hats that have benefited him at this point. He certainly did not sound like somebody who is a little bit shell-shocked by what this is going to entail for him. He sounds like he's very well in tune with what he's going to have to do. He wants to run a very similar offense to the one Klint Kubiak had, with his own wrinkles. And so he wants the continuity to be a big thing. Macdonald talked about that. So again, you didn't hire an in-house candidate, but now you can see why Mike Macdonald felt like this is our best opportunity to have continuity. It was going back to San Francisco and bringing in a coach like Brian Fleury.
Yeah, and there were two words that you just used there, Corbin, in your description that I think really stand out. And one of them was perspective. I think, again, because the Brian Fleury has worn so many different hats, that he just does have a pretty unique perspective. And I think that's one of the things that appealed to Mike Macdonald. And the other one was one of our favorite words, run. And when the assembled media were asking some questions about what makes a good red zone offense, I loved this opening sentence that Brian Fleury said. He said, to me, the people that can run it in the red zone have the most success. So I think that it'd be easy for a lot of Seahawks fans out there to wonder if you have a former, albeit high school, but a former quarterback, if maybe you might see the Seahawks offense start to kind of go more towards being a little bit more pass happy in the red zone. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. And again, anybody who watched Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers and the way that they focus in on Christian McCaffrey, I think understood that. But still, to hear the fact that Brian Fleury does want to continue to highlight the running game, especially the wide running game. He kind of talked about how when you get down into the red zone, then it's obviously a wider field than it is a vertical field. So horizontally, you have to be able to attack the perimeter. If you are arguing that the Seahawks should retain one of the fastest running backs in all of the NFL, the free agent and Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker III, I think that kind of speaks to the fact that Brian Fleury does have some interest in adding or retaining one of the great speed backs in all of the NFL.
When we come back, we are going to shift our focus back to free agency, which is going to start in 3 weeks. I mean, it's going to be here before you know it. And speaking of speed, Rashid Shaheed is one of Seattle's top free agents. We're going to be looking at the possibility of Shaheed returning and the rest of Seattle's free agent receivers that'll be coming up next year on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar. If I'm a GM and I'm trying to pick the number one overall pick from the 5-Hour Energy flavor family, it's got to be sour apple, the apple that bites back. It's a crisp, tangy taste, deliciously tart, and it's bold, a little sweet and a lot of sour. And if you're looking for a sleeper that could climb much higher on the draft board than expected, look no further than strawberry watermelon. Sweet and tart, has a candy-like flavor. It's the ultimate flavor duo. Some flavors were just made to go together. Add strawberry and watermelon to that list of delicious pairings. Find your new flavor at 5-Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen at other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I need to talk to somebody If I need to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs help your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedInNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedInNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed in this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. Make sure to check out the Everydayer Club. No ads and ad-free experience. Locked On Seahawks. Private Discord access to speak with Locked On hosts and much more. $5 a month or $50 a year. You can check out the Everydayer Club for Locked On Seahawks at LockedOnSeahawks.com/supercast. or check out the link in the show notes. Free agency just around the corner. As we've said a couple times, when you win the Super Bowl, the offseason gets sped up quite a bit because you played later than anybody else, and that's a good thing. I think most fans would agree with that. But Combine coming up next week. We've got free agency 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks away from starting in the NFL. And the receiver position is one that could undergo some significant changes for the Seahawks, at least in terms of mostly depth guys. But the one big name is Rashid Shaheed. And we saw the impact that he had. I think it was one of the best deals that John Schneider has made at the trade deadline. And he's made some fantastic ones at the deadline. But to get 2 kick returns for touchdowns, one of those being in the playoffs, and then having a punt return for a touchdown, he was just absolutely dynamic on special teams. We didn't get to see as many big plays on offense as I think the Seahawks would have liked to see, but he had a 50-yard catch against the Rams in the NFC title game. He had a 30-yard run against the Rams in that Week 16 comeback, and that was after he had returned a punt for a touchdown early in the game that really changed the momentum in that game back into Seattle's favor. And it felt like there were a lot of opportunities that were just missed between him and Sam Darnold. And so that really creates a big question. How much are you going to pay Rashid Shaheed when you know Jackson Smith-Njigba is probably going to be getting his contract extension and potentially the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL when it's all said and done? You've got all that money that you're going to have to allocate to your number one receiver. Is Rashid Shaheed going to be somebody that's worth paying $14 or $15 million a year, which is probably what he's going to fetch on the open market, especially with Klint Kubiak looking for a number one receiver in Las Vegas? There's a lot of wrinkles to unpack here when you're looking at Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned the Klint Kubiak connection. I mean, obviously very familiar with him during the half of the season that that Kubiak and Shaheed were here in Seattle. And then, of course, going back to where Kubiak was with New Orleans, where Seattle made the trade for Shaheed. So it's easy to draw some lines there where perhaps Rashid Shaheed might be looking to take full advantage of this opportunity here. He was paid $2.1 million this past season, but he has never had a real break the bank opportunity like he has now. And you mentioned, $13, $14, $15 million. He is being projected by Spelltrack, who I've been citing when we had our conversations about the running backs and cornerbacks, as far as projection of what type of salary may get. $14 million is what Spelltrack was listing here as a projection for Rashid Shaheed. So, again, to me, that's too rich for a player that, for all of the dynamic memories that he created for the Seahawks, they were largely on special teams, didn't have a single rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown during his time for the Seahawks. So if we're talking in that $8 to $9 million range, that I'm 100% on board with. But similar to the conversations we had about Rick Woolen and Josh Jobe at the cornerback positions, and certainly Kenneth Walker III at running back, I think that there has to be a cap that you are going to be, keeping in mind when you talk about bringing Rashid Shaheed back in 2026. There's no doubt that he is an unbelievable player that had a massive impact. But at the same time, I would not be surprised at all if he and his representatives are going to be looking to break the bank. I know what he said on NFL Network earlier today, that he wants to, take it back to Seattle. Of course, they all want to take it back, but is Seattle going to be willing to pony up the kind of dollars that Rashid Shaheed is going to demand on the free agent market?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question mark. And, is Rashid Shaheed going to be willing to maybe take a little bit of a hometown discount to stay in Seattle where he just won a title? Like, those are all factors to consider here. But I think the other thing that we have to mention, and I don't want to say this is an elephant in the room, because Torrey Horton was fantastic before his shin injury cost him the entire second half in the playoffs. Torrey Horton is going to be back healthy for the 2026 season. He'll be ready for OTAs. You're hoping. He is going to be ready for OTAs. You get him back. He had a 95-yard punt return for a touchdown before his injury. The Seahawks are comfortable with him being their punt returner and being able to have a similar impact. And he was much more impactful in the passing game. He had 5 passing touchdown catches this season before getting knocked out in week 10. I mean, he was putting up fantastic numbers as a rookie. It was a red zone weapon. So that is something the Seahawks have in their hip pocket here. We are going to hopefully get Torrey Horton back healthy, and he's going to be able to stay on the field. we're going to have that dynamic presence that's a bigger body receiver that was more effective catching the football and making big plays in the passing game. We're going to have him back. So that's kind of the hedge that the Seahawks already have built in here. And at the same time, Rashid Shaheed can do a lot of things that you're not going to be having Torrey Horton do. Torrey Horton's not going to be running jet sweeps consistently. He's not going to be involved out of the backfield doing stuff like that's not his game. And Shaheed was historically good returning punts and kicks this past season and just has a little bit more juice even than what Horton has. So you'd love it in a perfect world to have both those guys finally together on offense to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. And then you have one heck of a quartet at the receiver position for Brian Fleury to work with as a first-year offensive coordinator. But I'm with you. The $50 million a year just feels way too rich because I think Rashid Shaheed is a good number 2 receiver. I don't think he is a number 1. Teams like the Raiders might pay him as a number 1. The Seahawks would not be wise to do that, though. So you have to have that cap. And I'm more so feeling that with Shaheed than I am with, say, somebody like Ken Walker, who you're hoping is going to be giving you 19 or 20 touches minimum every single game and was so good down the stretch. And you've had him for 4 years. Offensively, Shaheed was very hit and miss, to put it lightly. I just don't know that you pay that kind of money for a player like that, even with his special teams ability.
Well, like you said, I mean, we're envisioning Rashid Shaheed as more of like the number 2 wide receiver. The Seahawks are already paying Cooper Kupp significant money. I mean, he's got a essentially $13 million in base salary. That's the 9 of that million has already been guaranteed. For this upcoming season. So Cooper Kupp's not going anywhere. And so if you're already allocating that amount of money plus whatever JSN might be getting, then you are spending an awful lot of money at the wide receiver position. And oh, by the way, with Rashid Shaheed being the slim built kind of guy that he has not been a real injury prone player, but he also hasn't been incredibly durable over his NFL and college career. Cooper Kupp has struggled with durability. As you mentioned, Torrey Horton has struggled with durability. Again, you're talking about allocating an awful lot of money to a wide receiver position when you just brought in a more of a run-oriented offensive coordinator than a passing oriented offensive coordinator here in Brian Fleury. So I think that, yes, you want Rashid Shaheed to be retained and you're excited about the upside of Torrey Horton and, Cooper Kupp and JSN working together. But because you already have some of the receivers in place, I think that there's limited opportunity and more importantly, limited salary cap space in which to kind of create this murderer's row, so to speak, of wide receiver talent for the Seahawks.
When you look at the other free agent receivers for the Seahawks, there's no other massive names that are going to be fetching big money, but guys that have been valuable on special teams. Derek Young, who I think you can make an argument as a top 2 player with Brady Russell away from the kicker and punter for the Seahawks on special teams. He is a dynamic tackler. He recovered that muffed punt in the NFC Championship game that led to a Jake Bobo touchdown, and Bobo's a restricted free agent. I'm anticipating with him or Cody White, both those guys, there's a really good chance that they are back in Seattle, but it won't be on a tender. They're not going to be getting a $3+ million tender offer. If another team wants to do that, then the Seahawks will pass because they're not going to be guys that are going to be playing that much on offense. But special teams-wise, these guys are very valuable. I would think there's a better chance that you get those 3 guys than there is that Rashid Shaheed comes back. If we're assuming that he's going to be making 14 or 15 million a year, and maybe the Seahawks would be willing to pay that price, but it feels like it would be more John Schneider-like to, hey, let's get these guys that are bottom of the roster players in terms of salary. Let's get them those 1-year deals that are a little more team-friendly than what a tender would be. And let's keep this going with these guys that are excellent special teams players at the back end of our depth chart at the receiver position.
100% agree with you. I mean, Derek Young is a truly unrestricted free agent, but he only only made $1 million a year ago. And $1 million is basically what Cody White and Jake Bobo also made. Although, as you mentioned, they're restricted free agents. I think that you're going to see Seattle probably bring all three of them back on 1-year deals, maybe a slight raise, but we're going to be talking $1 to $1.5 at most $2 million for any of those players. So the big fish is very much Rashid Shaheed, and I think it's going to be one of the more fascinating decisions. I think you can make a strong argument that Rashid Shaheed might actually be Seattle's top priority, even over Ken Walker III, because, while I would argue that K9 is the best running back potentially available to the Seahawks, when you look at all the free agent backs that are out there and all of the draft picks, at the same time, there's not a lot of receivers that have Rashid Shaheed's ability in terms of his age, his straight line speed, his ability to make impact plays as a runner, as a receiver, and as a return guy in this draft class or in the receiver market as far as free agents. Everybody's going to mention guys like Tyreek Hill, but when you look at the advanced age and, again, the durability and other issues that Tyreek Hill and other players of his stature might bring, I think that Seattle, again, has got a huge decision to make with Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the biggest question mark that they have going into free agency. Maybe Rick Woolen up there as well. But this truly does feel like a coin flip because we got to see what the rest of the market looks like. And the fact this is not a great receiver class, that could work into his favor in free agency, getting a big money deal from somebody else that he simply can't turn down and the Seahawks are not going to match. So we will see what ends up happening on that front when free agency opens on March 11th. Coming up next, the Seahawks coaching staff is taking shape. There's still a few questions that we have yet to have answered from Mike Macdonald as they build this out for 2026, but we'll break down some of the newest developments for the Seahawks on their coaching staff and which areas still have some question marks moving towards the meat of the offseason. We'll get to that up next here on our Thursday edition, Locked On Seahawks.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12 who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. Rob, we are drawing closer to the Combine next week. We've got free agency coming up in a little over 3 weeks. We are almost into the meat of the offseason calendar already, and yet the Seahawks are still finalizing their coaching staff, and that comes with the territory when you win or lose the Super Bowl and you lose a bunch of coaches that late in the process. Mike Macdonald and company, they are trying to finish things off and fill this staff out. But if Seahawks fans are looking for some good news, it isn't just Brian Fleury being hired as the offensive coordinator and having that big void filled. This coaching staff, for the most part, has been retained from this previous season, and I don't know that they're going to be losing anybody else off this staff. There's a couple question marks. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk about who we now can confirm is returning for this upcoming 2026 season. The biggest name, Justin Outen, who was their running back coach after Kennedy Palomalu left. Before that, he was the run game specialist. They had Rick Dennison as a run game coordinator. He's now going to be the run game coordinator officially, getting that title. The Raiders did not have a promotion available to get him an interview, and the Seahawks were able to block him from interviewing in Vegas. So Justin Outten is going to be back. I think that is a big deal for this run game. We saw how the run game flourished when he was involved with that. So you're going to have him, your new running back coach, Thomas Hammock, which has been officially confirmed by multiple sources to Locked On Seahawks. So we know Hammock is going to be coming in from Northern Illinois. We gushed about him yesterday. Daniel Stern, who knows what job he's going to have at this point. It sounds like Mike Macdonald is basically saying he could do a little bit of everything. They may come up with a custom title for him. Maybe he's just a pass game specialist. But that leads to the one offensive role we still don't know. Assuming that pass game coordinator is still going to be Jake Peetz, Rob, we still don't know who the quarterback coach is going to be. And Mike Macdonald today didn't really give any inklings on who was going to get that, other than that is something that they are still working on, trying to figure out who replaces Andrew Janocko.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Janocko was the traditional quarterback coach a year ago, of course, and has since moved on. Jake Peetz can also play that role. As you mentioned, he was the passing game specialist this past season. If he is retained, then I wouldn't be surprised at all if Daniel Stern, who just recently the Seahawks brought in from the Baltimore Ravens, that he could take over that role, either as quarterback coach. He was assistant quarterback coach this past year with the Baltimore Ravens, and has also played the role of passing game coordinator. According to his official bio on the Baltimore Ravens website, he also was, really in charge of working with John Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens, of course, as the game clock manager, as somebody who would help out on the coaches' challenges and things like that. So that's some of the reason why Mike Macdonald, I think, was, maybe a little bit vague in describing the different roles that Daniel Stern might be able to play for the Seahawks, because I think, for one, he's a multi-talented coach like the aforementioned Brian Fleury. I think also because Seattle is still making their decisions about what's going to happen with Jake Peetz, if he is going to try to take advantage of some of the different opportunities elsewhere, or if they are going to basically have, again, just this assortment of terrific coaches that they're all kind of putting in together, which I think that is a great problem to have for the Seahawks. And then finally, I think you got to go on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, with Seattle reaching out, or Mike Macdonald probably specifically reaching out to the defensive coordinator who replaced him with the Baltimore Ravens, and a linebacker that worked under Mike Macdonald with the Baltimore Ravens, Zach Orr, him coming in and to take over for Kirk Olivadotti as the inside linebackers coach for the Seahawks. Then it remains to be seen exactly which role that Kirk Olivadotti is going to play. Although Mike Macdonald did confirm today that Olivadotti is a Seahawk and is going to be with the club for the 2026 season, just in a different capacity than as the inside linebacker coach role that he served a year ago for the Seahawks.
Going back to offense real quick with that quarterback coach position, and I talked about it some leading up to the Super Bowl. Tyson Prince, who was their assistant QB coach last year, I was blown away interviewing him leading up to that Super Bowl, and you can see why he is highly regarded in that building. I would not be surprised if they just say, look, you had your chance as the assistant last year. We're giving you the reins this year. Mike Macdonald has no issue with young coaches coming in and taking on bigger roles. And Prince has been here. And speaking with him, just the intellect, the IQ from a football standpoint, he's coached receivers, he's coached tight ends, and he's coached quarterbacks in the NFL. And he is, I believe, only 31 years old. I'd have to double check on that. His age wasn't even on their profiling, but I believe somebody in the building told me he was 31. I mean, he is a baby in the coaching ranks, and yet he has coached all those positions for NFL teams that I just mentioned. I could see him being a fast riser, kind of like Nate Shieldhouse has been in Los Angeles with the Rams, where we could be talking a year or two from now, teams are head coach interviewing him because of his just his quick ascent. I could see Prince potentially, and maybe Daniel Stern is the assistant QB coach that guides him a little bit. But I could see Prince getting that QB job. And meanwhile, the defensive side, as you mentioned, Olivadotti, we talked about this earlier. I had been told that he had been considering walking away from coaching after this year, but there was always an outside chance that he was going to return. This sounds like the prime situation where he's going to have a different role, a specialized role that they have made for him, that he gets to be on staff. But maybe he just wanted something different, and that allows them to keep his veteran coaching presence around while having Zach Orr come in as that clear an obvious defensive coordinator contingency plan for when Aden Durde eventually gets his head coaching opportunity. So I think that's really been the theme of this, the contingency plans. I mean, Thomas Hammett gives you a contingency plan at offensive coordinator along with Justin Outen, and assuming that Pete's is going to be back, and Mac Brown. I mean, they've got a bunch of guys that are qualified enough to be offensive coordinator that are in-house, and they could have that be the option they turn if somehow Brian Fleury does really well and he gets a head coaching opportunity. You got next in the line, next man up. And defensively, you've done the same thing by bringing in some young coaches, and you've still got Carl Scott. You've still got Jeff Howard. Those two are coming back, even after interviewing for defensive coordinator jobs. I think you can make an argument, and it hinges on how Brian Fleury performs, of course, but I think you can make an argument that this is a stronger coaching staff overall than the one they just had in the Super Bowl winning season.
Yeah, and it sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. I mean, these are really good coaches. I mean, long-time Locked On Seahawks viewers and listeners, and thank you as always for all of your support. You might remember how excited that we were when Seattle brought in Klint Kubiak and Rick Dennison, who, of course, is moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders. Wish both of them well. But we're very excited about Klint Kubiak, Rick Dennison, and especially John Benton. And I was making the argument that Seattle was not going to be focusing nearly as many draft picks on offensive linemen or even free agency on offensive linemen. They just needed some experience in the coaching staff to be able to take some of the young talent that they had and help blend that into the high-performing functional unit that they became. I think the same thing applies to the whole rest of the franchise now as well. When you have coaching of this caliber, then I think that it just makes it that much easier for the young, good players to really blossom. And we know the Seahawks are incredibly talented. I think I would agree with you, Corbin, that I think that this Seahawks coaching staff is among the best ones I've ever seen, at least on paper. Remains to be seen if they all pull it out, I'll pull it off. But this coaching staff, it looks remarkable. And that's, again, one of the secret ways, the secret sauce, so to speak, about how you can be successful in the NFL. There's a salary cap, of course, when it comes to players. There is no such thing when it comes to coaches. To me, the best way to become a very good team, or in this case, to maintain being an elite team, is to spend big on the coaches. And the Seahawks did exactly that.
Just to put in perspective how I view this coaching staff and why I'm saying it's better even than the one last year, I was looking back through my notebook, and yes, I still write things like an archaic guy instead of typing it. I still write out notes. And I have my notes from last year when the Seahawks were getting ready to hire Klint Kubiak. And my list of top 10 offensive coordinator candidates included the following. It had Andrew Janocko. It had Klint Kubiak. It had the new offensive coordinator, Brian Fleury. I don't know why I've spaced on that. Had Brian Fleury on that list as well, and Jake Peetz. You've got a chance to go into this year with three of those coaches on this staff together. And one of them was just your offensive coordinator that you won a Super Bowl with. That is called identifying talent and nailing talent, getting them into the building and impressing them and offering the job and then developing. If they can do that with this crop that they currently have here, it's a good problem to have. You're going to have teams continuing to try to vulture in and take your coaches for head coaching opportunities. But the fact that this many guys are still here, I think that they've done an incredible job of fending off the vultures for the most part that usually are going after the scraps on Super Bowl teams.
Yeah, exactly. And that, to me, again, one of the most exciting elements of this. It remains to be seen how many those vultures are able to steal away some of Seattle's football players. But in terms of football coaches, I thought that Seattle defended those vultures as well as anybody could expect.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we've got a Blue Friday coming your way. Going to continue diving into free agency, a little bit more of this or that, but this time Nick's going to be pitching the scenarios to me. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure that you listen in. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.